Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Luke Papalo Show. Folks, it finally happened. Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes. And let me just say, what a great interview. This has been building up for a long time. If you don't remember, or if you needed a brief refresher, Tucker Carlson called out Nick Fuentes with Candace Owens when he had Candace on his podcast back in like August or late July. And if you don't remember, Tucker called Nick a gay kid living in his mom's basement, accused him of being a Fed, and this is right after Nick went on Candace. This is in the midst of his generational run, and this is the largest collaboration that Nick has done with Tucker. Now, before you ask, why is this such a big deal? It's because of the America First, the true America First message, right? This America should come first before any foreign nation. This thing where race realism is potentially a thing. Just putting people first, putting our country first. This is the movement that he represents, this Israel critical movement that has been pushed down for damn near a decade. And so to finally see this get the biggest, arguably the biggest mainstream push, biggest collaboration that Nick has had yet, this is huge. This is monumental. So we're briefly going to go through what they talked about, and then we're going to play one or two clips. We're not going to really engagement farm, but I want to just address a couple things that he said and recap it. Now, we've been recapping this rise of Nick Fuentes and specifically the America First movement because it is so powerful, because it is the only antidote for a country that is in collapse like we are. And so right here we have, this is the screenshot from the episode that Tucker posted on X, and it has the timestamps right here. So he talked about the origin story, and I'm not going to put this on the screen because I don't think it's really important. It's kind of counterintuitive to put it on. But the first thing, of course, was the origin story, right? Every mainstream interviewer that has had Nick on is talking about this origin story. In just the past 10 years, what he's done, how he got to this point, etc. Same thing, 17-minute marker, they talk about Daily Wire, they talk about Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, and how this company, Ben Shapiro in particular, just completely alienated Nick and made him a villain. We've seen this before. 35-minute marker, we go, why does Nick just continue to challenge the conservative establishment? And then, after that, it was basically 45 minutes. Then we get to the juicy shit. We get to why he attacked Joe Kent. And this was the antithesis of why Tucker attacked Nick in the first place, because Joe Kent was somebody that Tucker supported, somebody that ran for Congress in 2022 in Washington State. Basically, this guy that Nick was working with behind the scenes said, all you have to do is just don't denounce me. And, like, we don't even have to say that you publicly support me. Just don't denounce me. He denounces him. Nick exposes him and ends up getting him not elected, is then able to influence that vote within 1,000 votes and influence that election to the point where he lost because of Nick's lobbying and the Groypers lobbying and continuing to just destroy this guy and his reputation, specifically because he endorsed Israel and supported Israel and wasn't America First. And so Tucker and Nick, they talk about that briefly. Then we go into the identity politics thing. And Tucker goes kind of on the offensive a little bit and just questions why Nick believes what he is in regarding to the Jewish question, right? And it's spearheaded by him and the America First movement and the Israel critical movement, and how Tucker mentions that he loves Israel, but at the same time, he is critical. He brings up an interesting point, how he says it's contradictory to being a Christian, and this may be true, but Nick brought up critical points. Again, go to the episode. It's a great interview. And then we get to go to the part where Nick attacked Marjorie Taylor Greene, talks about Nick being a Fed, and the question of him being a Fed. Obviously, they both joked around after that big confrontation they had in August. Then we have, he talked about the dinner with Ye and Trump, Trump's assassination attempt, political violence in America. They talked about weed, alcohol, porn, feminism, and then the future of America. And let me just say, if you haven't watched the interview, go watch it. This thing will feed families. This is probably the best interview that he's ever done, specifically because he had this huge conflict with Tucker back in the summer. And to be able to see this, I mean, this has been rumored for quite some time. We covered this a couple episodes ago when Alex Jones kind of hinted at this interview happening. And the fact that it's happening right now, or that it already happened, is insane. I mean, months ago when Nick and Tucker were at war, or Nick was at war with Tucker after he called him gay and alleged that he was a Fed. Absolutely insane that we have this. And like I said, it will feed families. So we're going to play a couple clips. I'm not going to play all of them. This is very exciting. But here is this clip that we're going to play. Basically, Tucker apologizes for calling Nick a fed and alleging that, he was all these things and starting this circus. So we might not play the whole thing. It's a 3-minute clip, but nevertheless, we're going to play it for you. We're going to play it on 1.5 speed. Here we go.
So what are the other factors that prevent, I'm sorry I called you gay, by the way, but I think I'm just too old or something. I'm like, why is anyone married? You tell me, why aren't people married?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's the women. The women are extremely liberal. No one talks about that. Increasingly they do, especially after the last election. There's a 45-point difference.
Right there, he just apologized for calling them gay, whatever. But then listen to what Nick says in response now about women in America, particularly Gen Z women. It's a critical point, but this is something that needs to be acknowledged. We've talked about this on Innocent Villains, and I've talked about this on my solo show right here. There is a problem with women in America, and more because of societies, because of all the social media, because of OnlyFans. All of these incentives are allowing women to be, for lack of a better term, whoring themselves out and preventing themselves from becoming the good wives that we've been we are preached to about this all of our lives. We have to find a good woman, find a good wife, and more, Nick is bringing up credible points that's not possible, at least not as possible as it was. It's harder now.
Between men and women. The men are extremely conservative, increasingly. The women are extremely liberal.
What are they liberal on? What issues? Like, what does that mean, liberal?
Oh, they're very feminist.
Like, actually?
Extremely feminist, yes.
They don't believe that, do they?
I think they do.
Really?
Absolutely, yes.
I believe that. I think gender roles are a construct, that none of this is inborn. Like, you'd have to be an idiot to think that.
They like the idea of it. They like because of course, I think all women naturally want strong men.
Of course, obviously.
They naturally want a Chad. They
Yeah.
want like a tall, buff guy. But I think they like the idea of, none of them want to work either. None of them actually want to work.
No, that's what I'm saying. Of course.
Right.
It's obviously true. It's always been true. Work outside the home.
Right.
They don't have enough work at home. There's
Yes.
a lot to do. But no, I completely agree. So that's why I question, like, they're feminists in what sense?
Yes.
So that was very interesting. And like I said, this whole interview, so you would have thought that there was a lot of confrontation. In the beginning, I saw the title for this interview. It came out 3 hours ago. Relatively recent. You're welcome for the great coverage, by the way. You're welcome for the timely coverage. Worked very hard on the show. But, I mean, you see, here's another clip right here. This is a meme that somebody made of it quite recently after it came out. But it says right here, online right-wingers when they finally meet in person.
Well, I thought you were a fed.
I thought you were a fed.
I was a fed.
Yeah.
I'm not a fed. But whatever, I don't care what people think.
We showed each other a badge, as we know.
Well, I thought you...
So right there, you see what I mean? But they touched on a couple other very meaningful points, particularly pornography. Now, this came after they were talking about weed and alcohol, but this is increasingly the number one issue that's really hurting young men, particularly people my age. When you're given these phones so young, when you're given a phone, an iPad at 8, 9, 10 years old, these things are thrust upon you, and the guardrails, especially at the time when we were these ages, were very, very low. Our parents weren't equipped to understand the dangers of these technologies, at least not most of our parents. It was relatively new, and as a result, we were exposed to things that no other kid before us, when they were 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, would have been exposed to. You would have had to go and actively seek out pornography. You would have had to go to a dirty movie store or a store, and you go all the way back, and you had those dirty movie sections. Even then, you wouldn't be able to buy them because you had to be a certain age. The point is now, those barriers to entry are entirely gone. So kids that wouldn't have been hooked onto porn before now have it right at their fingertips, and that's a problem. And so they talked about it here, and I thought it was very insightful and informative. Let me know what you think.
And so something that is almost never talked about is that this is a generation that's totally sexually dysfunctional, I think, because of pornography. And some people are able to cope with it. Some people don't have a problem. But I think a lot of people, and maybe even a small minority, have a serious problem with it. And
How does it make people sexually dysfunctional?
I think that it's impossible for a real woman to compete with the availability and the novelty of pornography. A real woman like without getting graphic, is she's only one person, and maybe she wants to do something sexual, maybe she doesn't. Porn is, you could have 100 different women in one sitting doing anything, that whatever niche or idiosyncratic thing a person might be into, it's there. And so I think that novelty combined with that availability, it makes it so that, when you think about courting a woman, juice isn't worth the squeeze. And so there's like also a problem of like erectile dysfunction, people that can't enjoy regular sex because it does not compare to the intensity, the novelty, and the availability of porn. It's hyper stimulation. And so I think that's sabotaging a lot of normal sexual relationships.
It seems like it's making a lot of people gay too.
Yeah, and trans.
I thought that was a little bit off, but I mean, Tucker does go on to make a decent point here. We'll play it for you.
You think that's true?
100%.
What is that?
I think that the novelty is a huge part of that. I think that if you are somebody that uses pornography multiple times per day, which many people do.
Actually?
Oh, absolutely.
That's a lot of jerking off.
It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
And, if you're doing that multiple times a day, every day, for years, since you're a kid, well, eventually you get bored.
Yeah.
And you want to move on to something more extreme.
Which is a valid critique of porn and valid criticism of porn. And you see the surprise on Tucker's face when he's hearing the severity of this issue. You heard the surprise when he said, "Oh, Nick is talking about some kids watch porn, jerk off 1, 2, 3 times in a day," and Tucker's like, "Really?" He's just surprised. And this is, I think, what the older generation doesn't really understand about the severity of this problem. Now, it's not just affecting young men. The pornography problem is also affecting young women, but just not as much, obviously. But the stats show it does affect young women too. And so this problem now, it's been a decade and a half since this has been introduced to us, and it's been so easily accessible. And what Nick is bringing up, they're valid points. If you watch porn once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day, and you're a kid and you get addicted, you get physically addicted, you're in the prepubescent and then in the stage of puberty. These are your formative years. You're coming of age, and if this is how you have your sexual relationship, if you have a sexual relationship built around pornography, then it's not going to be enough eventually. Eventually, you're going to crave something more sexual, something more graphic, and eventually it gets to these awful fantasies that are triggered because eventually you start off with just basic porn and it becomes not enough. You have to continue to go up the levels to get that satisfaction, and that's the problem. And what he credibly talks about is this doesn't translate well in real life. It could potentially lead to erectile dysfunction, loneliness. You're completely in this relationship now with your phone, and instead of actually partaking in a sexual relationship, which he goes on to talk about, and Tucker goes on to talk about as well, you're in a relationship where you're watching 2 random people having sex. And then they bring up, too, the harmful effects that this has on women who are human trafficked because of this. It's a giant issue. And what it doesn't do is talk about who all owns the porn companies, which we all know who owns the porn companies. If you've been watching Nick, if you're part of the America First Groyper movement, you know who owns them. So we're not going to say the quiet part out loud. But the point is, they address a very credible issue, and I don't think that any really adult is talking about this because they don't understand. They don't go through these things. Like, we've all had to battle porn, shield it from our eyes. Like, we've all seen it online, and a lot of us haven't been able to get out of that hold, haven't been able to get that monkey off of our back, for lack of a better term, because it's such an addictive thing, and it's such an issue, and it doesn't feel like there's any help. It doesn't feel like there's any help to relieve yourself of these pressures. There are some places you could sign up for a course. There's a couple apps that are credible, but I think this is why you're seeing more and more people turn to Christianity, specifically Catholicism, the tradition, seeking out a relationship with God. Like, this is what Nick didn't talk about on this particular episode with Tucker. They had to cover a lot, but what he talks about it is having a relationship with God and just getting in touch with your faith, finding Christ, finding that relationship with him, a life of prayer. And yes, he does crash out on the super chatters 100%, but like that is the antithesis of the Groyper America First movement, is a Catholic nationalist movement. Having a relationship with God, self-preservation, self-betterment, like all of that stuff. There are so much good, very parallel to Andrew Tate, with a Catholic touch, with a Christian touch, with a religious touch, an emphasis on Christianity. And I don't think there's anything better out there for young men. A movement that young men can be a part of. I mean, it was summarized in this interview. And so that's not all. Something else I really did want to talk about when it came to this episode was, I mean, him being accused of being a Fed. Again, so I briefly covered when he apologized to him earlier in the video, earlier in the podcast. I briefly covered when he apologized to him for calling him gay. But in terms of, like, this was a huge thing. This was a very huge thing. And we all talked about it for a month, it felt like. This huge conflict that broke the internet because Candace Owens went on Tucker Carlson and they created this whole thing. So, but here's when they specifically talk about Tucker calling Nick a Fed and then Nick calling Tucker a Fed in response.
Me tonight, which he would never do, though he has my cell, and said, I'm really sorry I called you Hitler. Like, I didn't mean it. You're raising lots of legitimate questions, which I think I sort of agree with or am thinking about in a deeper way. I'd be like, great.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care.
And look, Tucker, that's why I'm sitting here, Right. I mean, because we had a contentious dialogue.
Well, I thought you were a Fed. I
thought you were a Fed.
I was a Fed.
Yeah.
I'm not a Fed. But whatever, I don't care what people think.
We showed each other a badge as we know well.
Again, that was the meme that I played for you. Continuing.
No, but I thought you were a Fed because I was like, why not? It's not cucking to say you're not talking about all Jews when you oppose a foreign policy position. It's not. There's nothing liberal about that. It's just true. That's the Christian position, okay? And two, why are you attacking like the best people and not the worst people?
Well, yeah. I mean, again, he disavowed me for my views on Israel and said I talk too much about white people and Christianity. And to me, that's like a sincere ideological disagreement.
I get it.
And, same thing with Marjorie. Marjorie fired my guy. She disavowed me. And, and you worked with Blumenthal on that article, but you called me on the phone and we talked.
Yeah. I
and
mean,
we
I
settled
was
it.
like, what? From my perspective, this is all so stupid and inside baseball and whatever. But for the record, I was like, first of all, who is this kid? I'm working at Fox News. I'm aware there's an internet, but I'm more out of it than you may.
But you get the point. Again, a great interview. I'm not going to play any more clips. You need to watch the interview. This is right up there with that recent Dave Smith collaboration. Dave Rubin, right up there with that recent Dave Smith collaboration in the PBD interview. If you're a normie, the PBD interview was very good. But this is right there, man. They hit on so many points, and so this is the kind of like summation of this whole generational run. The one more collaboration that he could do, just as the icing on top of the cake to cement the Groyper America First movement as a major political movement in the United States, is Rogan. That's it. I mean, that's it, man. Besides a Jubilee collaboration, which I think he did. I think that's that one where he's talking about, you're not going to see this for a couple months. I think he did Nick Fuentes versus 20 Israel supporters or 20 Jewish people or something like that. That's my speculation when it came to that months-long collaboration that won't happen till next year, won't come out till next year. That's my prediction. But nevertheless, like, besides that, Rogan is the last big collaboration that he can do to cement this generational run, to complete the gauntlet of all of the mainstream political commentators, podcasters, whatever the case may be on the internet, at least on the right, that have this power, that have this influence, that have this giant audience. And when he inevitably does go on Rogan, because he's been mentioned so many times, and the Groypers have been mentioned so many times, he's been attacked by James Tallarico, in particular by Jordan Peterson, the Groypers. But, I mean, we know who he's talking about. He had, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name here. He had Andrew Santino on, and he actually mentioned Nick Fuentes and the Groypers by name. And so more and more and more people are talking about who's Nick Fuentes, what are the Groypers, what's America First. And the ideas and the movement becomes legitimized, like legit. I started following Nick in December and then started watching the streams in March. And throughout this time, man, like it feels like 2 months after I started like religiously watching the streams, this generational run starts, and he's breaking containment. This whole movement is breaking containment, and it's gaining more legitimacy, and it's gaining more power. That's the crazy thing. Young people in this country are waking up and saying, we don't like what's going on, and we want the ability to change it, and we can change it if we have strength in numbers. And so in turn, this is what you're seeing. And so, like I said, the last big thing he has to do to cement this movement is go on Rogan. Then he's mainstream. He's already mainstream now. But when you get that Rogan collaboration, I would argue that the Tucker collaboration is a little bit bigger than the Rogan collaboration because they had that contentious back and forth back in August and late July. That contentious back and forth, that drama, that internet drama, right? That influencer drama. They had that. So in a way, this is probably the biggest payoff, at least for a first-time interview. But I can't believe that it happened. And again, I'm not going to play any more clips. You need to go watch the interview. It's a very good interview, and well worth it. It's like 2 hours and 12 minutes, I think, is the official runtime. It might be 2 hours and 18 minutes is the official runtime. Very good interview. Highly recommend. You have to stop watching this podcast. Nothing. Go watch the interview and then we could talk. But just to sum it up, man, really good interview and very, very overdue, but well worth the wait. So to just jump off, one more thing to say about this, and then the episode will be over, because this is like an emergency episode. This is huge. This is big news. Now what you're going to see, post this Tucker interview and post the Rogan interview, which is inevitable at this point. And we'll see what happens there. We'll probably get like an origin story, and then he'll address the Jordan Peterson attacks, the James Tallarico attacks, and so on and so forth. Now the America First movement is going to officially be legitimized. Now you're going to see a growing consensus of people that say, if you support AIPAC, if you support Israel or any foreign country before America, you're going to take a political hit for that. And that was precisely what Nick's point was and the Groypers' point was when they went after Joe Kent and eventually were able to get him to lose that election in Washington State. That's it. You can't. Well, gone are the days where you can just blindly support Israel over your country, and you could take money from a foreign lobby, donate it to your political campaign that will directly influence your votes and will, in some cases, allow you to sell out your constituents and your people that you represent. Gone are the days when all of these countries are able to benefit from our tax dollars in our country, but their people starve. Just today, I was listening to Breaking Points with Crystal and Sauger, and I saw the healthcare price on average for American families every year. And it's $27,000 per year on average. In 2017, they said it was $10,000 on average for American families for healthcare. And it feels like more and more every day we are getting pushed out of our own country. We are getting priced out of our own country. In addition to that, everything in the world, in our society, feels like it doesn't work. Go anywhere. Go do anything. Things don't work. Whether it's the service industry, they don't take your order right. Whether that's the retail industry, you buy a piece of clothing that's kind of expensive, and you come home and you discover there's a manufacturer, it's torn for say. There's an error by the manufacturer, and it's not just clothing. It's things like this desk right here. This is a table, okay? I had to take the table that I originally had here, I had to take it back because it broke upon just building it. There was a big problem. In terms of immigration, we need to shut down the border, and it has been shut down. Let's give Trump credit where the credit is due. But the mass deportations need to happen. We can't allow all of these people to come into our country, which is still a majority Christian country. It was designed to be a Christian country. We're supposed to have freedom of religion, but Christianity was always supposed to be the dominant religion. And when you have people that don't align with your morals or values at all, that aren't just Christian or not Christian, opposite of the religion, if they're Muslim, if they're Hindu, but they come from these countries where things like rape and murder are morally correct, and they're the norm, you can't bring those people into your countries. The idea that these people can all just assimilate is a fever dream, and it's not realistic. And so more and more people are waking up to this fact. And I just saw this stat today, and I wanted to read it to you. I might not put it on the screen. I might put it on the screen. It just depends. But it's very fascinating, and it's a little bit angering too. And specifically what it was talking about, and we'll talk about this more on Innocent Villains on Wednesday. But if I can find it, it would be very frustrating to show you. Here we go. So it was talking about SNAP, right? And again, we're talking about immigration, but it's very important that we really emphasize this. And I thought I had it. I do not. But basically what it said was, here we go. I'm going to put this up on the screen for you because it's very important. Basically what this said, we see all of the data on SNAP, right? And all these people now are making TikToks saying, if food stamps aren't available on November 1st, I am going to riot. I'm going to loot all of these department stores, all of the Walmarts, for example, Targets, and I'm going to cause mass chaos because I need to feed my kids. And this is frustrating because these people are threatening violence, and I don't think people are taking them for the word. I don't think we're taking them serious. Because on one hand, yes, these social safety net programs in principle should exist to help people that are really struggling. But if you're telling me you can't feed your kids, I think there's a bigger issue. But anyway, so I'm putting this up for you. Here we go. Now, this is the percentage of U.S. households that are receiving SNAP benefits. And it's food stamps by ethnicity. Okay, so you have Native Americans right here. 27.6% of Native Americans are receiving food stamps. Black people. 24.9% of black people are receiving food stamps. White people. 8.6% of white people are receiving food stamps. Okay, now these are all Americans. Those are the American groups. The rest of them, as you can see here, are all foreign groups. Afghans. 45.6% of Afghan people in the United States, Afghan migrants, Afghan immigrants, are receiving food stamps. I would argue that they should not have been let in the country in the first place because nearly 50% of them are scamming the government and using the government programs that we, the American taxpayers, are paying for. We are paying for these people to come to our country and live off of the government and live off of our tax dollars. That's the antithesis of the problem. That's the problem. The second group, the Somalians. 42.4% of Somalians in this country use food stamps. That means nearly half of this particular population uses the government to pay for their food. And then it goes down. You have Iraqis, you have Dominicans, you have people that are from the Caribbean, Puerto Rican. But Puerto Rico is technically an American territory. Nevertheless, it's still an issue. You have a fourth of them. And so on and so forth, you go down. Do you see the problem? Do you understand why young men in particular are so radical? Because our country is more and more unaffordable. We cannot afford housing. Therefore, you cannot afford to start a family. And then, like I said, what Nick brings up, you have to, lucky for me, I have a wonderful wife. But the majority of people can't find a good woman to start a family with because of this internet culture, because of social media, because of all this degeneracy. That's the problem. And so to kind of end this on a positive note, the generational run is allowing Nick and the Groypers and the true America First movement to really gain steam and break into the mainstream, break containment. I've been covering this for months. We've been covering it on the other podcast as well. I mean, this is what the dream was. This is what the goal was. And we really have a bright future because of it. So I don't know what's going to happen next. I mean, obviously the Rogan collaboration has to be inevitable now. And then hopefully the goal is, and it looks like we're pointing toward this, hopefully what's going to happen now is you're going to have politicians that are going to cater to young men who don't want to see their country being sold out, who don't want to see foreign countries and foreign interest ahead of their own. And if they, for example, they cave to AIPAC and they take the AIPAC money, well, then they're not going to be in power for very much longer. So, very positive thing. Things are looking up. The future, to quote Patrick Bet-David, the future is looking bright. So, I thank you for, if you got to this part of the episode, thank you so much for watching. I would ask that you please subscribe to the channel, like the video, subscribe, comment what you think about the video. Want to know what you guys think about the episodes and how I can improve this further. We're offering memberships now for 99 cents per month. You can become a member to the Luke Papala Show, become a member to support the Luke Papala Show and the Innocent Villains podcast. And we'll be having merch, hopefully, in the near future. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye-bye.